Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Nice to see you all again. And it's great when you move into the second afternoon of a two-day conference and the hall is still absolutely rammed. So, I wonder what you've all been chatting about over lunch. Where's Matthew? Matthew stood up this morning and said, the first thing Matthew said, and he was quite right, was to say, just an update. Everything's just the same in Downing Street. And it gives me no pleasure to say to the 2 or 3 of you who don't know that things have changed in Downing Street. And the Prime Minister is not, well, she is the Prime Minister, but she's not the leader of the Conservative Party. So, there'll be a new Prime Minister in a week. And fortuitously, we have 2 politicians on the platform. So, however, they're here to discuss health, and we will discuss health. So let me just do a quick introduction. Look, one of the things that we've talked about over the last day and a half is the political vacuum that exists in Northern Ireland at the moment. Maybe you'll dispute the word vacuum, but certainly the unusual political circumstances in Northern Ireland at the moment, and a lack of functioning political leadership the way in which the system has been designed, and we know that there's a major problem as well across the water in Westminster. So we'll address that. That's the context, as I've said several times, for the conversation that we're having. But we do want to talk to 2 leading politicians about their ambition, their priorities, their commitments for the future transformation of health and social care services here. That's very important. So let me introduce my 2 guests. Sir Geoffrey Donaldson is the leader of the Democratic Unionist Party. You don't really need me to tell you that. And Colm Gildernew, equally you will not need me to tell you, is a senior Sinn Féin politician, still Sinn Féin's health spokesperson, yes, and a former chair of the Assembly's Health Committee. So, you're both extremely welcome. You're going to speak for 5 minutes each, and then we'll take about 10 minutes of questions. I've cleared this with you already. I just want to give you an opportunity, both of you, to say something about the political comings and goings that have been happening in Westminster. Sir Geoffrey, you were in Downing Street talking to Liz Truss yesterday afternoon. You backed her leadership. Do you feel that the rug has been pulled from under you about 10 minutes ago?
Well, first of all, we didn't back Liz Truss. We stayed out of the leadership contest because we believe that every political party has the right to select their own leader. It's not for us to influence what the Conservative Party does. Clearly, they have a problem. But the DUP is no stranger to having its own problems and having to put them back together again. And I think what the Conservative Party needs to do quickly now, and I believe that there will be a leadership contest in a week, it needs to move quickly and they need to get this resolved because we're in a situation where this is affecting the markets. It's impacting on all kinds of aspects of life. So it needs to be dealt with quickly and promptly. When I met her yesterday, she was, I have to say, there was no indication that this was coming. But when I stood in the lobbies last night and saw the Conservative Party at each other's throat, I knew that the end was just around the corner. And so it has happened. I've been at Westminster for over 25 years. Leaders come and go, but there's a job to be done over there, and we just got to continue working with whoever is the new Prime Minister. Okay,
I guess when I said you backed Liz Truss, I didn't mean directly during the election campaign. I just mean you were comfortable with a Liz Truss-led Conservative Party and government. You felt that you could do business with her, and she might represent well your interests. It gets more difficult now for you, does it, potentially?
It certainly does. It gets more difficult, I think, for all of us, but we need to stay focused on getting solutions, and that means in particular in relation to the negotiations with the European Union. I think there's a window here of a few weeks where we can make real progress, get an outcome, and get the institutions restored. We want to do that well in advance of the end of this year so that we can launch into 2023 towards the 25th anniversary of the Belfast Agreement and really launch the next stage of the process, which is building prosperity in Northern Ireland for everyone.
Okay. I'm sure people will want to talk to you about some of that in a moment or two. Colm Gildernew, your response to what's just happened within the last quarter of an hour in Downing Street.
Well, I suppose I have to say it's one of dismay for people out there who so badly need direction, who so badly need decisions. We're facing into what is going to be a very difficult and a very challenging winter in terms of the cost of living crisis. We're already dealing with a significant health crisis here in relation to COVID, which is still ongoing, all of those additional winter pressures, all of the pressures that were already in the system around health and social care, and people need stability and structure and decisions. And I think the shambles and the chaos that's unfolding in London is really worrying for people out there who are already very anxious about how they're making ends meet at the minute, where their mortgages are and all of that. So it's not good.
Yeah, and people will also say that's fine, fair comment perhaps, they may say about Westminster, but local politicians as well are responsible for a dysfunctional legislative assembly and a dysfunctional executive at the moment. Now, I'm not inviting the two of you to point fingers at each other, but the reality is that our politicians here aren't doing the job fully in the way that they're being paid to do it.
Well, and equally the reality, and people know that it's the reality, that we in Sinn Féin and 4 of the 5 parties are ready right now to sit down and restore that executive. There's been an election, that process has been held. It's incumbent on us to sit down together, to get ministers around the table, working on the issues that we need addressed.
Okay, let's talk about health, because that's what you're both here to do. We'll take questions from the floor in about 10 minutes' time, but can I invite you, first of all, Sir Geoffrey, as the party leader, to come up and share your thoughts with the assembled audience on what you think the challenges are and what the solutions might be for health and social care in Northern Ireland at the moment, and you are very welcome.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for this invitation to be here this afternoon. And I really do want to be engaging and continue to engage with people who work in the health and social care sector. And I've met, as party leader, many of the organisations that you represent and will continue to engage. I've got Pam Cameron with me today, who is our health spokesperson in the Assembly. Pam is meeting regularly with the groups. The party leaders this morning, you'll be glad to know, Mark, met at Stormont. We are continuing to meet as parties to look at what we can do to ensure that people get the support they need at this time. And that support primarily comes from Westminster, because that's where the money is to deliver the support, and we're continuing to work on that. And I note that the theme for this conference is about recognition, ambition and mobilisation. I just want to very briefly address those 3 aspects of your theme. And at the outset, very sincerely thank you for all that you have done, not just through the pandemic, but continue to do within the health and social care sector. And that covers the whole range of the sector, from virologists to administrators to the people on the front line in the wards and hospitals. And I know how difficult and challenging it can be at times. And secondly, ambition. And I understand that you want to have the ability to do the job you were trained to do to the best of your ability. And it is true that at the political level, we need to look seriously at how we can help you to do that more effectively. We've talked for many years about reform, and there are lots of reports on the shelves at Stormont about reform. We said in our manifesto in May that we want to translate that reform into action that makes real change and delivers real change to how we do health and social care and deliver for the people in Northern Ireland. That remains our position, and we're engaging Pam as part of a working team, working alongside Robin Swan to take forward the measures that are required to deliver that reform. So even though we have ministers in place at Stormont, yes, the executive is not meeting formally, but those ministers continue to do the work, and it is not true to say that nothing is happening. That group, that working group, is working towards the delivery of healthcare reform in Northern Ireland, and my party fully supports that and wants to see it and recognises it must be radical. We are not going to hold back. We know what needs to be done, and the political will is required to do it. And I can assure you, from our perspective, we are determined to deliver that to its fullest extent. So that we change the way in which you are able to deliver the care and support and the treatment that people need. And then thirdly, mobilisation. I recognise there's a big problem at the moment in terms of retention and recruitment within the health and social care sector. A lot of that is down to pay. And it is my view and the view of my party that we need to sort this out once and for all, that we need a decent pay award that invests in our healthcare workers, that enables people to feel they are valued and can stay working in the health service, because we can do all the reform we want, but if we don't have people who feel they are valued and who are working to deliver those reforms on the ground, then it will fall flat on its face. So we need to invest in the health and social care workforce. We need to deliver decent pay awards so that not only are people rewarded for what they do, but that we drive up recruitment and retention in the health service itself. We all know that in primary care there's a major problem at the moment with our GP practices, and we're looking at ways in which we can ensure there is better support for the delivery of primary care. We're engaging with GPs about how we can make that more effective. Pam and I have been meeting the GPs to see where the problems are and to design and deliver the solutions that are required. And in my own constituency, for example, we've got a new primary health care centre co-located with the Lagan Valley Hospital, a more joined-up approach to the delivery of primary care with diagnostics and with treatment that will be, I believe, will make a transformative difference to the community that primary care centre and hospital will deliver. And that's what reform can look like. That's what change can look like when you invest properly and cleverly in how you deliver effective health care. So Mark, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm more than happy to further engage, and thank you for this opportunity.
Jeffrey, thanks very much indeed. Let me invite Colin Gildernew to share his thoughts with us. And you're also very welcome, Colin.
Gormagat, Mark, agus Tasha Honor Mordom of Shaw. It's very great honour and delighted, and I want to thank the NICON for inviting us. I would also like to extend Michelle O'Neill's apologies. She hasn't been able to make the meeting today, given everything that's going on. So I'd just like to say, first of all, that Sinn Féin are completely committed to universal healthcare, free at the point of delivery, based on a person's need, not their ability to pay. We want to transform and modernise our healthcare system to ensure that the provision of universal healthcare not only survives, but thrives and improves the lives of those that rely on them. That needs to be done in partnership with health professionals, staff, trade union representatives, service users and communities. And I'm absolutely delighted to see so many people here today and to see such a buzz and positivity in this room and from so many health professionals, and that gives me significant heart in relation to the quality of leadership we have in this room and outside. Currently, however, despite the best efforts of our workforce, patients are often having to wait unacceptably long times in emergency departments to get urgent care. Those, including children suffering with poor mental health, face long delays in receiving the right support. Workers and families are finding it difficult to get timely appointments with their GP, particularly since the COVID pandemic, and those caring for loved ones are struggling to access care packages and support for vulnerable members of their families. Of course, no one is more aware of these pressures than those of you who are working in an increasingly pressurised system. We have seen over the past few years how really important all of our health and social care workforce are, and we owe you a huge debt of gratitude for everything you have done in the run-up to COVID, during COVID, and in this period of time when we are dealing with so many other pressures. Goramila Mila Moyagav Galer. The reality is that health and social care workforce is central to the provision of a universal healthcare system now and into the future. Workers across the system, working in hospitals, care homes, health centres and caring for people in their own homes who were overstretched and under pressure before the pandemic are now simply exhausted. We have vacancy rates in nursing of over 10% and over 6,500 vacancies right across health and social care. Symptoms of over a decade of Tory austerity and cuts to public spending. If we want to deliver timely access to services and achieve better health outcomes to the community, then we need to support the workforce to do that. There's a clear need for a workforce plan to be put in place and for safe staffing legislation to be brought forward. And those working in health and social care also need to be valued. Applauding the dedication of health workers during the pandemic was an important expression of solidarity and thanks, but it doesn't pay the mortgage and it doesn't put food on the table. Health workers deserve and are entitled to fair pay and conditions, and the realisation of that is vital if we are to keep the workforce we currently have, recruit more staff which we so badly need, and protect frontline services. Ultimately, we need to prioritise health. That is why Sinn Féin Finance Minister Conor Murphy proposed to make health the Executive's #1 spending priority. Minister Murphy proposed increasing the health budget by £1 billion over 3 years in his draft budget. A 3-year budget, and that is crucial. A 3-year budget would give greater clarity to the Health Department and trusts to invest in services and the workforce. The absence of an executive prevents this from happening. It prevents us from investing in the health and social care workforce, tackling waiting lists, implementing important strategies like the mental health and cancer strategies, the need to do better for our children, as we discussed in an earlier session here this morning, and ensuring people can see a GP when they need to. All these and more need an executive in place. Of course, it is also true to say that a re-established executive by itself cannot fix all of the problems. Finance Minister Conor Murphy wrote in July, along with his Welsh and Scottish counterparts, to the British Chancellor, urging him to develop a fair approach to public sector pay which values workers. The letter also called for an increase in devolved budgets to deal with significant emerging pressures, including in the health service. The British Government do need to step up and start taking decisive action in response to record-breaking inflation impacting public finances. And what we are seeing unfolding across the water at the minute is clearly going to impact the ability to do that. However, notwithstanding the challenges, if we, as political representatives here, genuinely want to start to repair our health service, if we want to plan sustainable services for the future, and if we honestly believe that we can make a difference to people's lives, then let's get the executive back up and running. Let's get the executive back working with everyone in this room and with those outside it to deliver a better health and social care service for us all.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Colin. 2 quick questions from me, and then do we have, Heather, we have microphones, do we? And we can take a few questions from the floor. So Jeffrey, can I just ask this question? I suspect I'm asking it on behalf of at least some people here today. You talked about party leaders having met. You talked about ministers remaining in post. Robin Swan was here yesterday and made the point that he is probably, in all probability, unless you can tell us otherwise, in all probability in his final few days as Health Minister. Because of your actions, they will not, Robin Swan and others, will not be in post from next Friday and will be facing a December election. When health and social care services are facing the enormous pressures they are, why is that okay?
Well, I've never said it was okay, and it's not my decision to call an election. That is a matter for the government.
But you could decide to go back into the executive, that's the point.
Well, and the government could also decide to amend the legislation to extend the period whilst the negotiations continue with the European Union. I have to say that if the government is really committed to getting an outcome, getting the protocol resolved in the next few weeks and providing the stable basis for government in Northern Ireland, then it is a matter for them to decide whether the way to do that is have an election. Personally, I don't fear an election. I'm happy to take my case to the people, but I don't believe an election will change anything. It won't solve anything. And I'm interested in getting this thing solved. I've been patient. I've waited. Whilst the Conservative Party had their difficulties over the summer, there was nothing happening. I said, well then, let's at least get back to the table in the autumn and get this sorted out. And I just think that the problem with an election at this time is that it moves back the period when we'll get an agreement and we will get this resolved. So I'm not proposing an election to solve anything, and the government has it within their power. The government can do many things and have done many things. They could introduce legislation like that to extend the period further to allow for the negotiations between the UK and the EU to come to an agreement. I think there's a will now to get it done, and I think an election actually would get in the way of that. But notwithstanding, if the government decide to hold an election, we'll fight the election. But I'm clear, I'm trying to look at the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is, Mark, an election won't change things, it won't get us to a solution, and what we need is get that solution, get the political institutions back up and running on a stable basis, and if we do that, I think we'd be in a better place.
Okay. I'm not sure this government could introduce legislation on anything like that, but I guess we'll find out in due course.
Well, they have the power to do it, Mark. Why couldn't they do it? They've done many things in the past.
Because the party's falling apart.
Next week in the House of Commons, we will have the final stages of a bill which deals with a devolved issue which the government decided to take back to Westminster and legislate on it, even though that is a matter for the Assembly.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, Mark, but the government can do many things and has done many things. It needs to decide what is more important, taking forward the negotiations and getting a solution, or having an election. My view is very clear. Let's get to the solution and get the political institutions restored.
Okay. Colm, let me ask you this question very quickly, and you touched on it in your presentation there. Why does Sinn Féin continue to give the impression that the reasons that there are funding difficulties in the health service and in other departments here in Northern Ireland is because the Treasury doesn't give us enough money, when we get more money in Northern Ireland pro rata than anywhere else in the United Kingdom?
Well, we don't give that impression. I don't agree. Clearly, Conor Murphy identified from our own budget 1 billion additional. However, my reference there is in relation to the inflationary pressures, the pay uplift, and those are things that are within Westminster. And I make no apology for us, people here who pay their taxes, who work in the health service, and who are in need of services, that we make that case. And it's also obviously relevant that we've done that in conjunction with Scottish and Welsh administrations as well.
Okay. Let's take a few quick questions here. Mindful that there's another session that's very important coming up, but I think since the day that's in it and the fact that we've two significant politicians here, we should hear a little bit more from somebody there just with you, Heather? Yep. Okay. Can you keep quick question and we'll get some quick answers.
Hello, I'm Joanne Rhodes from the Health Innovation Research Alliance Northern Ireland, and we are very much about health and wealth in Northern Ireland, and during this conference we've heard that a £1 investment in health delivers a £4 return to the economy, and we've also identified, as we've published our report, that an investment in health produces economic returns for the country. This will require cross-departmental work across health and economy and also education to actually bring forward the skills and the workforce that we talked about. Are there opportunities without an executive in place to begin to build that so that when we do have the opportunity, we can move quickly so that we can deliver these things ready for the health of our citizens, our workforce and our businesses here in Northern Ireland?
Okay. Do you want to comment on that, Colm?
Well, I agree in relation to the impact we get. There's not a health professional in this room who doesn't understand that if we can move, particularly if we can move those resources out closer in the community to where people are, via multidisciplinary teams, via better mental health services, via a resource cancer strategy. All of that work should be continuing within the Department of Health. There's absolutely no question about it. However, it will require resources, and that budgeting process is not in place at the minute to carry out new initiatives like that. And it's incumbent on us to ensure we get that done as quickly as we can.
Thank you. Sir Geoffrey.
Yes, and that's why Pam and the working group that's working alongside Robin Swan are looking at what can we be agreeing now and putting in place so that as soon as a new minister is appointed, there is a direction of travel, a plan that we can work to. So that work and those discussions are taking place. But I also have to be honest, and we have to be realistic. The cost of living doesn't just impact on households in Northern Ireland. Every hospital at the moment is running 24/7. The cost of heating our hospitals, our clinics, our schools, all of our public infrastructure in Northern Ireland is going through the roof. And it is eating up all the additional money we have. At the moment, the Northern Ireland Executive is projecting an overspend this year, an overspend in health alone of 450 million, and in total almost £1 billion above what we have in our budget. Now here's the problem. Next year, the Treasury say that that money will come off our budget allocation next year. So if we overspend by £1 billion, that £1 billion comes off our budget next year, so we have £1 billion less to spend. So what we need to do is make the case to the Treasury, and that's what we're doing, to drive forward the reform and change agenda, we need that additional funding in order to be able to create a better return for the money that is spent in health by doing precisely the kind of things that you are talking about. You do have to invest to get the results that you're talking about. So that is going to require an approach to Treasury. We're going to have to pitch for that money to ensure that we can deliver the investment that's required to get the results.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. You're all very polite. I'm going to take one last question, and it's from Professor Mark Taylor from the Royal College of Surgeons.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, and thank you for acknowledging the dedication of health and social care staff. Thank you for also recognising the energy in the room. Bengoa 2016 obviously had five-party support. There was a plan. Within Bengoa, it said, we need to face the change needed or have unplanned collapse of the health service. How true we were in that document, because we had 3 years of political situation, we had a pandemic that no one saw coming, and we now have political instability again. How long do you think the survival of the NHS in Northern Ireland has, and can that reflect a change of emphasis on the priorities of Northern Ireland at this present time? Geoffrey?
Mark, in truth, I don't know the answer to your question. I can't be precise, but I can say this. Time is of the essence, which is why we want to get things sorted out now. And that includes, the protocol isn't just some sort of anomalous creation. It impacts on healthcare delivery as well. I'm aware of a situation a few weeks ago in a Belfast hospital where heart operations, life-saving operations had to be postponed for 3 weeks because the protocol prevented that hospital from getting the equipment it needed from a supplier in Great Britain. They had to go halfway across the world, and it took 3 weeks to get it to Northern Ireland. 3 weeks when people who should have been having life-saving surgery weren't getting it. So for the sake of all of us, let's get this sorted out within the next few weeks. Let's hit the end of the year, get the executive up and running, and look, within the next, and the plan that we've been engaging with Robin Swan on is to immediately prioritise. Number one priority is to initiate the healthcare reform process immediately, and to get on with that. So look, I don't know how long we have, but I know this: we cannot delay any longer. As soon as that executive is fully functioning, let's get that reform process underway. The plans are being laid, the discussions are taking place, no time is being wasted. We want this to happen.
Colin?
Well, in relation to how long do we have, I don't think we have any time. We're not facing a crisis, we're in the crisis. And there are significant already challenges, and it's largely down to the goodwill and additional work of staff on the ground that are keeping services propped up. So we need to transform now. We need to engage in the process. We need to get out into communities, and we need to frame this around the opportunities. It cannot all be around cost and loss. We need to go out and set out how things could be done differently. We need to show political leadership to do that. We need to work with everyone in this room. We need to work with staff representatives. And I believe it can be done. But the thing is, we don't have any time to delay in doing it. None.
I mean, it's a sad state of affairs, I suppose, that you even have to ask the question, Mark. Yes. Mark's nodding in agreement. Is there anybody else wants a quick final one? Are you broadly happy? We've covered quite a bit of ground there in a relatively short period of time. Final thought, parting thought, anything for people in this room to be optimistic about in the political world, Sir Geoffrey, that you want to draw attention to leave people in a positive frame of mind rather than a negative frame of mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in the Kingdom of Mourne and spent most of my childhood with the Mourne Mountains as my main view. And I take the view that when you consider where we've come from in Northern Ireland, the mountains we have climbed already are far higher than the ones that are in front of us. So I believe this can be done. I believe it can be done within the next few weeks. I believe we are seeing now the political will developing and emerging to get it done, to get it sorted out, to ensure that the foundations that are in place for political stability and to launch the prosperity agenda in Northern Ireland for the next 25 years, I think is critically important. So the next few weeks are going to be, I believe, the decisions that are taken in the next few weeks, and that includes elections and all of that, Mark, will shape the future of Northern Ireland for some time to come. I've moved in my journey over the years of the peace process in Northern Ireland and so on. I've gone from being a pessimist to being a realist to being an optimist. And I do believe in this place. I believe we can make it work. We want to make it work. But for goodness sake, government make the right decisions over the next few weeks, focus on what needs to be done and get us a solution.
So are we going to see compromise in political leadership between now and a Christmas election?
Well, we need to get an agreement, Mark, and agreements mean sitting around a table and hammering out a solution that everyone can support and live with.
Okay. Colin, send people away in a positive frame of mind if you can.
That's all. Well, I have to say, like, it is apparent, and I'm delighted to see so many people have met over the past number of years. We have some of the best health leaders and health professionals in terms of their commitment, their passion, their knowledge, and their ability to turn the situation around. What I think we must do, and this is where I differ from Jeffrey, I don't think we can afford to wait for order to emerge out of the chaos of what's happening in London. I think we need to sit down right now. We need to get ministers around the table. We need to get an executive reformed. We need to clear that budget to put an extra £1 billion into health, and we then need to work together to transform how we deliver health and social care.
Okay. We'll leave it there, folks. Listen, we appreciate you're both busy people, and we're very grateful to you for making time to be here today. Jeffrey Donaldson, Colin Gilgany, thank you both very much indeed.